Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Paige Hulse and I'm the attorney behind Paige Hulse Law. Today I'm going to be talking about an issue that is, I think, my most frequently asked question that I get ever. It's actually an issue that I just spoke about with a group of local wedding professionals, and it's a question that arises particularly in the wedding industry, and that is, who should sign your contract and why? Um, and how should they sign your contract? So I'm going to break all three of those questions down in this video for you today. If you have any questions about what I talk about today, you can reach out to me at hello@pagehulse.com. So let's get started. I'm going to get started with an actual real life example. I won't name any names, but this might sound like a kind of ludicrous story, but like I said, it actually happened. So say that you're a wedding planner and you sign a pretty high figure contract with a client. It's going to be a huge wedding. You know for a fact that the mother of the bride is going to be, or the bride's family is going to be paying for the wedding. And so you are wondering who should sign the contract. Is that going to be the mother of the bride, or is that going to be the bride? Say that the mother of the bride is pretty opinionated as well, just to add another wrinkle into things. So first, kind of a backstory here. The reason why you might want to have the mother of the bride sign the contract is because you will have what's called privity of contract with the person who signs the agreement with you. Now, privity of contract is obviously a contract law term. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds with all the legality behind privity of contract, but what that means in essence is that's the person that you are contracted with. That's the person that you have to listen to. And that's the person that owes you money at the end of the day for the amount that you guys specified in the contract. And that's where it becomes important, because it might sound kind of silly to have, or it might seem kind of weird to have a mother of a bride sign something like a wedding planning package or a contract. But if they're the one paying for the contract, then of course you would want them to be liable for paying you for the contract amount. So back to my real life example. Say that the mother of the bride, like we said, is pretty opinionated, and she wants the wedding to be a totally white winter wedding. She wants white flowers, and she wants flowers everywhere. Now, say that the bride is not really a big flower person. They've told you they just want greenery at the wedding. They don't want any flowers there. They definitely don't want any white flowers there. So you were trying, as a wedding planner, you're trying to make both parties happy. But the issue comes to a head the week before the wedding, and you are stuck wondering if you need to listen to the mother of the bride. She's the one that signed the contract with you, or if you need to listen to the bride herself, because obviously it's her wedding day. So what do you do? Okay, so going back to the idea of privity of contract, if you had the bride and the groom if you had the bride and the groom sign the contract with you, they are in privity of contract with you. They are your clients. Privity of contract, like I said, is just the legal way of saying, or that's a fancy way of saying that your contract is with the person who signed it. So even though the mother of the bride might be really opinionated, and even though you know that the mother of the bride might be the person who is pulling the strings financially, if you had the bride and the groom sign the contract, they are the ones that have to listen to you. You're going to have, of course, that kind of lingering question in the back of your mind of, well, if I make the mother of the bride angry, is she not going to pay for the wedding at all? Am I going to get paid for this? And from a legal perspective, that's not really something that I would tell you to worry about at that point. If you've signed the agreement with the bride and the groom, you are contracted to listen to them and to do what they tell you to do, in terms of what the contract specifies. If the mother of the bride does refuse to pay at the end of the day, then you still have a valid contract remaining with the bride and the groom. And there are avenues that we don't like to talk about, but there are avenues of recourse for you to get your money back. Going back to the example of if the bride and the groom sign the contract, but you know that the mother of the bride is paying for the wedding in the end. If you decide to go with the bride's specifications and ignore the mother of the bride's, she might get mad and threaten not to pay, but she has no legal recourse against you. She can't sue you for breach of contract or, any claims like that. So you're protected from a legal standpoint. And I think that in a situation like this, that is priority number one for you, because like I said, there will be other recourses available for getting the money that you're owed under the contract. Flip that on its head. If the roles were reversed and the mother of the bride is the one that signed the contract because you knew that she was the one pulling the strings financially behind the scenes, you would have privity of contract with the mother of the bride, like we talked about, but you would also have what's called a third party beneficiary relationship with the bride. And again, this is a legal term. I won't get into it too much, although any contract you're signing in the wedding industry should contemplate third-party beneficiaries. You should have a paragraph that is stated or that is titled third-party beneficiaries, or you should at least have a line or two in some of the legal terms at the end of the contract specifying third-party beneficiaries. So what that means is that's just the fancy legal way of saying that although they didn't sign the contract, everyone involved in the contract knows that they are contracting for something to the benefit of that third-party beneficiary. I hope that makes sense. From another perspective, that means they are a third party to the contract. They didn't sign it, but the contract is for the benefit of that person. So the name's kind of intuitive when you think of it like that. Practically speaking, from a legal standpoint, this means that if, like I said, you had signed the contract with the mother of the bride, things go south, and everybody ends up mad at you. The mother of the bride and the groom all end up mad at you. They actually, all three could have a claim against you because you're in privity of contract with the mother of the bride. She's the one that signed it, so she's the one that could sue you for breach of contract. The bride and the groom are third-party beneficiaries. So technically, in a court of law, they would have a contract claim against you. So from a legal perspective, this opens you up to new liability from three different parties. And my job is to help you limit your liability in every way possible. So just there's a lot of considerations involved, of course, kind of like we talked about already. But from a purely legal standpoint, I think it is best to have the bride and the groom sign the contract, or the bride sign the contract. The bride and the groom would be best, because you don't want to have three different parties that you're answering to. You don't want both the mother of the bride and the bride to have breach of contract claims, potential breach of contract claims against you. Not only is this going to give you only one party to obey, meaning the bride and the groom as a married couple, but it also just limits your liability in terms of how many people actually will be able to sue you in court. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Now moving on to just some general, small, frequently asked questions that I get about signing contracts. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. First, what is a signature? A signature is anything that reflects the intent of the parties to enter into the agreement. So it doesn't have to spell out their names perfectly. It doesn't have to be legible. It just has to be something that proves their intent. Okay, who should sign your contract, or who can sign your contract? Make sure the person signing is at least 18 years old. If they are signing on behalf of an entity, such as an LLC or a corporation, make sure that they have authority to sign on behalf of that entity. I can't stress this enough, because I actually have a case going on in court right this minute, like today, over this exact issue. Somebody signed on behalf of an LLC and they didn't have authority to sign that contract. So the question becomes, who has authority, or is the contract valid? Can that party get out of the contract? Have your clients sign the contract at the end of the agreement on the signature line. If you're, buying a contract template, that'll be an easy thing to see. A lot of people ask me about initially next to important provisions, and that's something that you are absolutely able to do. That's not something that's required to be done at all. But if you have something like particularly your payment part of your contract, that's something that if the client is initially next to that agreement or next to that paragraph, then that just further proves that they read it and that they have to abide by it. On a practical standpoint or on a practical level, that helps them actually read it and make sure that you are both on the same page so that they don't just skim through it and, miss some important payment terms. If, worst case scenario, you end up in court, again, that's just further proof that they knew exactly what they were entering into. Okay, so another question is, when should somebody sign the contract? The contract is going to be the contract is going to become effective on the date that it is signed. Courts don't want you to pre or post date signatures on any. If parties are signing on different days, which comes up pretty frequently if you're signing anything remotely, like through an electronic signature or anything like that, the agreement is going to become effective on the date that the last party to the agreement signs it. Okay, and I am going to include some examples on a blog post coming up soon for you when it comes to how to sign on behalf of an entity like we were talking about, like an LLC or a corporation. You're going to have to be really specific about how that signature line is laid out. You're going to want it to say the name of the person signing, comma, owner or principal of, Page Hulse LLC, whatever the role of that person is to the entity. And then the person is going to need to sign under their name. So for example, I would say Page Hulse on Page Hulse, and then on my signature line, it would say Page Hulse, comma, owner and principal of Page Hulse LLC. So like I said, signatures on contracts are some of my most frequently asked questions. It's always the littlest things that seem to get us in the end. You spend so much time and effort going through contracts and trying to find one that's right for your business that you kind of forget to think about that very last but very important point of who and how and when and where the person should sign the agreement. So just keep our earlier points in mind. The person you're signing the agreement with is your client. That's the person that you're legally bound to listen to. If you decide not to have the primary beneficiary of the agreement sign it, for example, the bride and the groom in a wedding services type contract, just remember that you are opening up the door to having a breach of contract claim with both the person signing it and that beneficiary, meaning the bride and the groom as third-party beneficiaries to the agreement. So I hope that helped clarify your questions today. If you have any more questions about what we talked about, you can email me at hello@pagehulse.com.